Animal of the Week has been a great addition to the channel, but with university being so demanding, it has been a while since I've been able to make one. Of course, every now and then an interesting animal might be discovered that is too great not to cover, but I think the regular run of the series has realistically come to an end, and let's be honest, it did a while ago. So I'd like to take a look back at some of the best bits of Animal of the Week over the years, from the first episode to the latest, the most popular to the least, and my picks for best animal of each scientific class represented throughout the run of the series. It will certainly be entertaining to hear how my voice and production skills have changed over time, so please excuse the changes in audio and video quality you're about to endure. The first Animal of the Week was the Streets Tenrec over 5 years ago. I chose this animal literally just because it was on an internet list of interesting looking mammals.
Welcome to Animal of the Week. This is a new weekly series done by me, Ollie, where we look over a different animal every week. These videos will be short, but hopefully enjoyable and informative about the many unique animals we live alongside. If you want to suggest an animal, feel free to let me know in the comments. Enjoy the video. This week's animal is the street tenrec, a strange mammal that resides on the east side of Madagascar and resembles what can only be described as a hedgehog dressed like a bee. There are two types of street tenrec, the lowland and highland. The lowland tenrecs live on the east coast of Madagascar that is covered in a band of dense, humid rainforest that stretches from the north to the south of the island. The highland version lives in a much smaller range of high plateaus, savanna and upland tropical forest. Other than the habitat, the only big difference between the two types is colour. Lowland have more yellow, whereas Highland have whiter stripes.
The latest Animal of the Week was technically the prehistoric turtles called Meolania, chosen because of how much everyone seemed to enjoy the video on every time things had evolved into turtles. However, the last proper Animal of the Week done on a non-extinct animal was the very newly discovered Antarctic strawberry feather star, chosen for its strange look and prominence in the media around its discovery. Welcome back to Animal of the Week. It's been a while, so let's get right into it. This week is a brand new animal discovered just recently, and so a lot of the information on this animal is speculative, but grounded in logic, reason, and the information we know about other similar species. The Antarctic strawberry feather star has sort of taken the internet by storm since its discovery, which was published in July, largely due to its otherworldly appearance. Some have compared it to the facehuggers in Alien, and the fact that it has Antarctic in its name, which usually sparks interest. The strawberry comes from the fact that the nub at the bottom of its body from which the feather-like structure protrude resembles a sort of knobbly strawberry. Feather star obviously derives from it being a feather star, a type of untethered crinoid found all over the world's oceans. The Antarctic strawberry feather star is not the only new Antarctic feather star. Previously it was believed that only one species existed, but authors of the paper Resolving the Taxonomy of the Antarctic feather star species complex Promachocrinus kerguelensis, Emily L. McLaughlin, Nerida G. Wilson, and Greg W. Roos have found that there are now actually 8 species. 4 new species were found and captured from the sea floor, and following DNA analysis determined to all be separate species. This then prompted a wider search of the existing archive of Antarctic feather star specimens. After more DNA analysis, 3 more species were discovered from these existing specimens. The poster child of the new discoveries is the Antarctic strawberry feather star. All are fairly similar though, and the largest difference is the number of tentacles, or more properly known as cirri, and also the coloration. Cirri are different from tentacles as they are less flexible, strong, or sensitive. The strawberry flavour has 20 cirri. 6 of the species have this many, with the other 2 having just 10. The strawberry variety also have different colorations. The original Antarctic feather star has a yellowy brown coloration compared to the strawberry that has a darkish purple shade to it. Despite this, many of the differences between species are incredibly subtle, and so simply identifying them by appearance is what led to the assumption that there was only one Antarctic species. DNA analysis has allowed for the differences to be discovered. Mitochondrial cytochrome oxidase subunit 1 is the genetic marker used to find the difference between the species. According to this paper, essentially this gene is highly variable and mutates so that it is unique in each species and therefore is an indicator of when there is a different species. The most popular animal of the week for a long time was the Antarctic scale worm, so I feel it deserves to be seen. Welcome to a very special animal of the week.
As you may know, it is currently Worm Week, a completely made up week that we invented because for some reason a lot of you like worms, and I guess Worm Week is quite a catchy name. In this Animal of the Week, we will be looking at this rather horrifying worm. The piece of gold glittery nightmare fuel you've been looking at on your screen is called the Antarctic scale worm, an animal with the mouth of a xenomorph and the body of a microfiber mop. These worms are members of the family Polynodae, the family that is made up of all other scale worms. This also makes them polychaetes, the well-known class of annelids that contain such famous worms as bobbit worms and Christmas tree worms, so the Antarctic scale worm is in good company.
However, recently there was a huge surge in views that put Priapulida, also known as the penis worm, far out in front. The internet once again proves how immature it is.
Welcome back to another Animal of the Week. In today's video, we're taking advantage of good old clickbait by looking at penis worms, or their official name, Priapulida. Priapulida is actually an entire phylum of worms that resemble penises, but it's actually a rather small phylum with only 22 known species of penis worm, some living but others extinct from millions of years ago. However, some modern scientists have classed this phylum as simply a class within a different phylum, Cephalorhyncha, as they sought to merge three rather small phylums, Oryncha, Priapulida, and Loricifera together, as they all share some of the same basic characteristics. Now it's time for a little history lesson in classical Greek and Roman gods. Priapus is the Greek god of various things like gardens, bees, protector of livestock, vineyards, and a few other things. But most famously, he was the god of male fertility. As he was originally Greek, he was of course appropriated by the Romans a few centuries later, and filled the same role. What has all this got to do with Priapulida? Well, Priapus was famously depicted to have a rather large set of male reproductive organs, and so Priapulida was actually named after him due to the resemblance between the penis worm and the Greek god.
The title of the least viewed Animal of the Week, as of the publishing of this video, is jointly held by the polar bear and the Kehansi spray toad. Both sit at around 10,000 views, compared to Priapulida on 1.4 million. Some animals clearly are more equal than others. The polar bear was our Christmas special, and understandably it has few views, because there's nothing really new to learn about them. Most people already know what a polar bear is.
It's Christmas Eve, and so in true festive spirit we'll be looking at the polar bear, Father Christmas's main predator and the reason he never steps outside his grotto without a rifle. Polar bears live in that really cold place up north, you know the one. More specifically though, they live in Russia, Canada, Norway, Greenland and Alaska. Even more specifically, they tend to be found on the edges of sea ice, where the sea begins, allowing them to have easy access to their prey, seals, that live there. Polar bears will move around a lot as the seasons change and the ice melts and freezes. During the summer, they'll move to solid land, and when winter comes and the ice refreezes, they make their way back onto the frozen oceans again to hunt.
The Kehansi spray toad was done in a different format from most other Animal of the Weeks, and focused almost entirely on this very unknown animal's risk of extinction.
The habitat destruction that occurred was because of the construction of the Kehansi Dam. As dams go, this one was not that large and cost around $272 million to build. It did cause a great deal of environmental damage, but to try to present all the facts, the dam does produce around 13% of Tanzania's total electricity, so it's up to you whether it was worth it. The dam cut off around 90% of the water flow into the gorge where the toads lived, which caused a massive reduction in spray that the frogs needed. To try to combat this, a sprinkler system was set up to try to keep the area humid and keep the toads alive. However, this system was not functional when the dam opened in 2000, and the toad numbers suffered. In 2003, however, the population rose again to around 20,000 individuals, before then sharply declining to only 5. This crash occurred due to the sprinkler system breaking down during the dry season, leaving the frogs with little to no water, the dam opening to flush out sediment, flooding the gorge with water full of pesticides, and a disease called chytridiomycosis appearing in the area, all simultaneously hitting the small 2-hectare area where the toads lived. Chytridiomycosis is caused by a fungus and occurs mainly in hot temperatures. The outbreak most likely occurred within the Kehansi spray toad population because of the lack of water from the waterfall. As I said previously, the waterfall spray kept the area at a constant temperature, but during the outbreak the lack of water from either the waterfall or the sprinkler system caused a temperature increase, which helped the outbreak of the disease. The disease is thought to have gotten to the toads from the boots of workers and environmentalists who came to the area at the time. Outbreaks of the disease still plague the captive breeding facilities where spray frogs are being bred. What the fungus actually does is it invades the outer skin and keratin layer, and from there it is thought to kill the toads and other amphibians that get the disease by destroying the membrane and therefore upsetting osmotic balance of the frog. However, this is just the leading theory and we aren't entirely sure if that's what kills them. Though this toad is extinct in the wild, all hope is not lost. There are many captive breeding programs working to breed new populations, and in 2017 there was an attempt to introduce them to Tanzania. Hopefully we'll see these toads back in the wild and completely self-sufficient, but that will take time. For now at least they aren't completely extinct.
Now my favourite episode from each animal class. Firstly, mammals. It has been a long time since a mammal was Animal of the Week, mainly because I realised mammals don't sell. They aren't as strange looking as deep sea monsters, and people were more interested in the truly bizarre creatures, not the cute ones. But my pick for best mammals has to be the Sega Antelope, a truly bizarre looking animal.
Welcome back to Animal of the Week. This week is the Sega Antelope, a normal looking antelope until you see its face, then you start to question your sanity as you stare at its miniature trunk. Sega antelopes live in the huge steppe of Central Asia and Western Asia, but they had an even larger range during the last glacial period. They used to live from the British Isles all the way through Central Asia, over the Bering Strait and into northwest territories of modern-day Canada. These large open plains allow for the huge herds of Sega antelope to migrate all over the place and provide them everything they need to survive. Sega antelopes are even known to live in the more desert climates of Mongolia and Kazakhstan.
Next is the birds. Many have been covered, but my favourite would have to be the Dracula Parrot for its amazing look.
It's a new week and therefore it's time for a new Animal of the Week. Or is it a new week? I don't know. I think I'm starting to lose all concept of time. Well, my calendar says it's Monday, so I will trust in that. Anyway, this week we'll be looking at the Dracula Parrot, a red and black parrot that has no relation to vampires, blood-sucking, or Transylvania, but its feathers kind of look like blood, and it's got a scary looking face, so I guess that is close enough for whoever gave it that nickname. It's a nickname because it's not the parrot's real name, but Dracula Parrot sounds much better than Pesquet's Parrot. Pesquet's parrots are the only members of their genus, this word, and they are classed as true parrots, so at least half of its name is correct. It is indeed a parrot.
Now the reptiles. The best one being the Mexican mole lizard, the most bizarre I've ever seen.
Clearly one adaptation stands out above the rest in this animal, its arms. These arms are where the Mexican mole lizard gets the name mole from. The structure of the arm looks incredibly like that of a mole, with long fingers, a large surface area and claws. They are obviously used to burrow just like a mole, and is an excellent example of convergent evolution where two unrelated animals have evolved to have almost identical adaptations. Mexican mole lizards have another amazing adaptation. Like many lizards, they can detach their tails. If under attack, the Mexican mole lizard may burrow down into the sand and detach its tail to block the entrance to its pursuer. However, this adaptation has one drawback: they cannot regrow their tail after, so this is only a one-time bonus. Mexican mole lizards also have a vestigial trait. They possess vestigial bones that are what remains of their hind legs and show that they used to look much more like a conventional lizard. Evolution-wise, the Mexican mole lizard is part of the order Squamata, alongside lizards, snakes, and Amphisbaenia, the group the mole lizard is part of. It is believed that the crown group of Squamata originated in around the early Jurassic.
Amphibians made a lot of appearances, the best one in my opinion being the rain frog.
Welcome back to another episode of Animal of the Week. Today we're looking at a family of very sad frogs. This family of sad frogs are known as the rain frogs, scientifically called Brevicipitidae. Now there are many different species of rain frog, but they all share the same characteristic look of depression and sadness, and yet somehow that makes them incredibly cute. There are 36 separate species, which makes them a relatively small family, but they make up for this by being so adorable. They are true frogs as they hail from the order Anura. They are most closely related to the family of frogs called Hemicetidae, commonly known as the shovel-nosed frogs, and the resemblance is clear. However, what the rain frog lacks in nose, the shovel nose compensates for.
Insects are next, and here is where it starts to get hard, with some truly unique looking and bizarre ones to choose from. The Traby Beetle is, however, my favourite, with some very close contenders, but it just looks so prehistoric.
One very interesting thing about these insects that sets them apart from many others is that they do not have the normal progression in life that many other insects do, of being in a larval form, then pupa, then adults. The females will simply grow from their larval stage, never going through a large metamorphosis. It isn't entirely known why they do this, but the current hypothesis is that staying in the same general form and not spending a lot of energy going through metamorphosis allows them to put more energy into producing offspring. They have some defensive adaptations as well. The strong spiked exoskeleton is obviously great for protecting its soft innards and providing a formidable armour to any predators. It can also act like a tortoise shell in that the females can withdraw their heads back into the armour, allowing for better protection from any attack.
Here I'm going to add in a group that is not an official class, but as you may know, the channel loves. Worms. Worms are hard to actually scientifically classify, but you know one when you see one. My favourite one covered is undoubtedly the Hammerhead Worm.
So far we have asexual and sexual reproduction, secreting enzymes and tetrodotoxins for digestion, strong muscles to hold down prey, and the ability to invert its throat out of its mouth to devour prey. So what other interesting adaptations do they have? Well, they have what has been called a creeping sole, basically a strip on their underside that is covered in little cilia that, along with the slippery mucus they produce, allow them to move. They have been observed to be mostly nocturnal animals, hunting and moving around at night. This is clearly due to their main prey item, the earthworm, also being nocturnal and only coming to the surface at night. The hammerhead worm also likes it dark, humid and cool, so the night is the perfect time for them to move around. These strange worms are part of the family Geoplanidae, which contains many other flatworms very similar to the hammerhead worms, but who don't have the hammerhead that makes them so special and distinct. The family is comprised of 4 different subfamilies. These 3 I won't try to pronounce, and the hammerhead worm subfamily of Priapulida.
Fish come next, and yes, I know the exact scientific classification of fish is very complicated, and what is a fish is very complex, but let's just stick to what is clearly just a fish in the colloquial sense. My favourite being covered is the black swallower.
Their diet consists of mostly fish, and this time not ones that are smaller than itself. Eating fish up to 10 times the mass causes a lot of strain on the black swallower's stomach, which can sometimes result in them tearing, killing the fish. The black swallower really doesn't hold back. They eat every part of the fish they swallow, and they use their sharp, thin teeth to latch onto their prey. If splitting stomachs wasn't enough, sometimes when these fish overdo it and swallow something too big, they can die in another slower way. If their prey is too big, it may start to decompose before the stomach acid of the black swallower has had enough time to break it down. When the fish decomposes, it releases gas which fills up the stomach and causes the black swallower to float upwards towards the surface. Sometimes this isn't fatal, but most of the time the fish can be killed from anything from new predators to decompression sickness, and yes, fish can get decompression sickness. This is actually how many of the specimens have been found, bobbing dead on the surface of the water having eaten something too big.
Gastropods are commonly found among the episodes, my favourite being the adorable leaf sheep.
The reason they require shallow waters with sunlight and algae is all because of their diet. They feed upon algae and bits of phytoplankton, however it doesn't just stop there. The very special thing that makes these sea slugs worthy of a video is their ability to photosynthesize. This is known as kleptoplasty. Kleptoplasty is the process by which the actual chloroplasts from the plant or algae are literally stolen by an animal when they feed. The word kleptoplasty literally comes from a combination of klepto, Greek for thief, and plasty, as in chloroplast. This ability to sequester the chloroplasts allows the leaf sheep to survive off energy from photosynthesis for many months with no solid food being consumed. However, the leaf sheep is not entirely unique in this ability. Some other sea slugs can also photosynthesize. The emerald green sea slug is another such slug that has the ability of kleptoplasty. These slugs look far more the part than the leaf sheep, as they actually look like leaves. Now, it's not entirely certain how the leaf sheep breeds. However, as they are sea slugs, it is not unreasonable to assume that they will reproduce much the same as many other sea slugs. Some sea slugs mate using the wonderfully weird penis fencing technique, where each individual is neither male nor female, and they will fight to impregnate the other so that they do not have to carry the burden of egg laying. Other sea slugs are able to mate with themselves, if they so choose. A lot of sea slugs that have this ability also use the penis fencing technique, and will only mate with themselves if they are truly desperate, as asexual reproduction produces biodiversity in the species. As the leaf sheep is part of the group Opistobranchia, they are all hermaphrodites, and therefore it is almost certain that they use these 2 methods of reproduction.
Bivalves are next, the best undoubtedly being the Gooey Duck for sheer comic value.
Welcome back to another Animal of the Week. To start this episode, we must first clarify one thing: how to pronounce the name of this week's animal. Despite the fact that it looks like it's called a geoduck, It's actually pronounced Gooey Duck, which just makes the animal somehow even better than it already is. The reason for this pronunciation is due to the name Gooey Duck being derived from a Lushootseed word meaning dig deep. Lushootseed is the language spoken by many of the coastal Salish tribes in modern-day Washington state. This animal is classed as a species of clam as it belongs to the class Bivalvia. It is a member of the genus Panopea, which includes many species of clams also called gooey duck, but today we are looking at the original gooey duck, the Pacific gooey duck, as these are the most widely known and also the species that gave all the other species the name, as it was the Native Americans of this region that coined it.
Sea spiders represent a foray into Pycnogonidae, a rather unknown class, but still one. Sea spiders possess a very unique way of breathing that no other known animal on the planet possesses. They breathe using gut peristalsis. This is where the contracting of their digestive system forces the circulation of oxygen around their bodies. They do not have lungs or even gills, and so they absorb oxygen directly from the water through their exoskeletons. As they are mainly legs, they absorb it primarily through them. But to get the oxygen flowing around the rest of their body, they contract their guts, which, as you will remember, are also in their legs, forcing the oxygen circulation. Is truly a remarkable feat of evolution. Another adaptation is the size of the South Ocean giant sea spiders. You may be wondering why this species gets so big compared to most others. It's actually an adaptation to survive the cold. Their size gives them a smaller surface area to volume ratio and therefore allows them to conserve heat better and survive. The best branchiopod is undoubtedly the awesome looking dinosaur shrimp.
Welcome back to Animal of the Week, and once again I'm trying to stay away from deep sea animals because they're just too easy to make clickbait from. So today we're looking at a marine animal from a very shallow body of water. These tiny little trilobite looking things are nicknamed dinosaur shrimp. I will admit to a little bit of clickbait here because this genus of crustaceans are only nicknamed dinosaur shrimp and you won't find them referred to as dinosaur shrimp in the scientific community. They are actually called triops, a genus of 10 separate species that look very similar but are distinguished between by where they live and small structural differences. Many of you might be quite familiar with triops as they are sometimes sold as kits for children to hatch and grow. I personally had never heard of them before this because at my school we did the same sort of thing but with brine shrimp instead. Brine shrimp and triops are actually related though, both being members of the class Brachiopoda.
Cephalopods made a few appearances, my favourite being the eerie big fin squid.
New week, new animal. This episode we're taking a look at what seems to be some sort of alien creature. Except it's not an alien, it's the big fin squid, one of the many horrors that inhabits our oceans. Big fin squid are actually a genus of 5 different supposed species, but due to the elusive nature of these animals, few specimens of each species have ever been studied, and so it's not unlikely that perhaps some of them have been misclassified. Their genus Magnapinna is part of the order Oegopsida, meaning it is a relative of the Humboldt and giant squids. Interestingly, it's unsure whether we have ever encountered a fully grown big fin squid. Juveniles and larval specimens have been found, but it's disputed whether or not we have ever found an adult one, which means they could grow far longer than their reported length of 4 to 8 meters.
There are a few more classes of animals represented among the animals of the week, but many just have singular animals and this video is probably already too long. Finally though, a few honourable mentions. The Bagworm Moth seemed particularly popular and is truly amazing as it constructs its own house.
The use of long-lasting cocoons provides many benefits to the bagworm moths. It gives longer-lasting protection to the females who otherwise would have very few ways of defending themselves with no real wings. The cocoons are also much tougher when made out of bark and sticks, giving the pupa inside better chances of survival. The materials used are always locally sourced and so blend in well to their environment, camouflaging the bagworms from any potential predators.
The Gangas Moth is a thing of nightmares.
Welcome back to another episode of Animal of the Week. Sadly, Worm Week has come to an end, and so we will not be taking a look at any worms this episode. Instead, we are looking at a moth. The Gangas Moth is what happens when you let a moth crossbreed with Cthulhu, creating a nightmarish and frankly satanic looking creature. Luckily, this is just a moth belonging to the subfamily Actinae, and not a satanic beast sent to destroy the world. These moths are actually first described by the father of Linnaean classification himself, Carl Linnaeus, back in 1762, when specimens were sent to him from India for him to study and classify. It is unknown what his reaction to first seeing this moth was, though it's very possible he also got as freaked out as many of us when he laid eyes upon this nightmare, though he wouldn't have been able to compare it to Cthulhu as H.P. Lovecraft wouldn't have been born for another 128 years.
Following that, another of my favourite moths is the Hummingbird hawk moth.
These moths, like hummingbirds, feed upon nectar from flowers. They therefore mainly target nectar-rich flowers such as honeysuckle and red valerian, and they have excellent eyesight to spot these flowers. They also love flowers that have long and thin sepals, the part of the flower at the base of the petals that protect the bud, as these provide less competition, as only animals with long proboscis specially adapted to feeding this way, such as the hummingbird hawk moth, can get to the nectar. Like hummingbirds, they are fast and really quick, and dart around the flowers feeding as quickly as they can. They have even demonstrated that they can remember where certain flowers are, and will revisit these sites at the same time every day to feed.
Finally, the telescope fish is truly too scary and bizarre not to include.
Welcome to a new episode of What Horrifying Creature Can I Rustle Up From the Internet to make a video about this week. This time I think I've outdone myself on the horrifying factor and really turned it up to 11. The telescope fish looks like what would happen if someone locked a minion in a nuclear reactor as it had a meltdown. There are two species of telescope fish, and together they make up the entirety of their family Giganturidae. Their genus is simply called Gigantura. They get their name from the Greek gigante, meaning giant. The end of their name, tura, derives from aura, meaning tail, so their genus name essentially means giant tail, which is fitting because they are mostly tail, but not quite as much tail as last episode's animal, the king of herrings, as the telescope fish are only about half tail, where the oarfish can be about 3/4 tail. Unsurprisingly, the common name telescope fish comes from their strange eyes, but whoever named them was stupid because they have 2 eyes, so really they should be called the binocular fish, but whatever. I guess that was already taken by Winteria telescopa, which is commonly known as the binocular fish, but it is so stupid because its binomial name literally has telescopa in it, so why on earth isn't that the telescope fish?
In writing this video, I realised just how many amazing and strange animals have been covered on Animal of the Week, and there are so many more that I really enjoyed learning and writing about. Though the series is no longer a regular occurrence, I do look forward to making more episodes in the future, when I have less university work to focus on. Thank you for watching this video, I really hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you'd like to learn more about our world, its history, and the wonderful life that surrounds us all, please feel free to subscribe to the channel if you think we deserve it, and if you'd like to see more from us.